Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Lisa Marshall. I am the Clean Water Advocate from the Sierra Club Illinois chapter, and I was invited this evening to share a little bit with my colleague, Denise Pointer, to talk a little bit about our engagement post-explosion and the sampling that we've done. Full transparency, I am brand new to the issue, so we are tag teaming. Denise is calling in from Michigan. She's from the Michigan chapter. She is the one that conducted the sampling and work with the lab. I am here to facilitate the conversation and help answer any questions, so let's talk a little bit about who we are as a Sierra Club, how we got involved, and what it is we've done with other communities. So welcome. I apologize that we are meeting on such sad circumstances. My condolences to everyone who's been, well, not my condolences, but my well wishes to everyone who's been impacted. It is not easy dealing with these issues with industrial neighbors, and so I am here to help ease some tension, but also just congratulate you all for getting this far, and know that we're always better together. So thank you for being patient with tech issues. Denise is on the phone, so I don't know how loud it's going to be. I'll do my best to make sure that everyone can hear and understand what it is that we do. So thank you again for having me and adding me to the agenda.
Mila, is your microphone on?
Check.
It should be on the top. They're actually jumping you
Check.
If it falls off, that's okay. It happens to everyone else.
Oh, that's the microphone. Hey, y'all. Hey. All right. So again, that's me with different color here. There's three of us kind of involved in this initiative. Sonia Lunder, who is our toxics policy advisor, and Denise Pointer, who is a Sierra Club volunteer from the Michigan chapter. Sonia is not here this evening, but she also has been in contact with some of the community members and was really instrumental in getting us this far. And I'm the aquaholic because I'm the clean water advocate, and so I love everything that has to do with fresh water. So who are we and what do we do and how do we do it? So number one, we are not consultants, so I want to make sure that that's clear. No one hired us. We are a national nonprofit. Each state has a chapter, and so I am from the chapter of Illinois. We were formed in 1959 to protect natural resources, and we often work with municipalities, businesses, other stakeholders on a range of environmental issues. LaSalle falls into our Heart of Illinois group. The chapter is made up of 14 groups, and so at the grassroots level, volunteers, residents work together to push for environmental protection and equity at the municipal level or at the county level, and then us at the chapter, we help facilitate that in the various groups. So how did we learn about the company explosion? Well, my phone was ringing off of the hook with, hey, you need to, set up a rapid response team. We learned about it over the news, as well as from locals in the Heart of Illinois group. There was a visible impact where ashes turned green and also pink, but we suspected that there were some more invisible threats just because of the nature of the company, which led us to kind of be a bit curious as to what the response is going to be with the various agencies. So before we get, before we get into the samples, I was asked by Jordan Crane to share a little bit about how we engaged with the Rockton response in 2021. And so post-explosion, we connected with community members, one specific Stephen Hall, and others using a Chemtool Fire Facebook group. So this was a way to organize people, identify who were the stakeholders kind of taking the lead and translating to the other community members, as well as a place where people felt safe to discuss what their priority issues were without feeling as though they were, just in a space with a lot of noise. The community was primarily concerned and confused about health department's guidance, and so there was a lot of information, and some of it might have been perceived as in conflict or coming at different times. The Sierra Club toxic specialist, Sonia Lunder, noted that there was limited testing for PFAS, and so our toxic specialists usually kind of look very high level to understand what's going on with an issue, and then we begin to kind of create a strategy for response. Sierra Club volunteers were then trained to collect water samples, which showed PFAS in their local waters. We also have organizers as a part of our organization, and so my colleague Emily Chaklis coordinated a Q&A with a healthcare professional. Now, all of this is done kind of separate from the municipality. This is specifically for the community. And so often our organizers will kind of take stock. What are the questions? What are the concerns? And we identify trusted sources and professionals, bring them in, coordinate town halls, create one-pagers so that people have relevant and timely information. From that, a health guide was created, like a 1 or 2 pager that was then disseminated to help people understand how to keep themselves safe, as well as how to formulate the questions for their medical professionals and maybe even direct a specific ask to their city council. Community members subsequently testified at an EPA hearing on disaster prevention rules, in which also Sierra Club supports people to learn how to give really conscious, mindful public comment, because sometimes passion as well as priorities can kind of go in different directions. And so we help people understand how to craft those responses. So this fire occurred in 2021 in June. PFAS was identified or used in the response. And this is just a little bit about the sampling that was done. I know we want to talk about you all, so I'm going to move a little bit forward. I can make this slide deck available for anyone who wants to see it or use it in the future. That will not be a problem. All right, so I want to start off with what is the importance of sufficient environmental sampling post-crisis. Confirmation sampling can help identify priority hotspots of contamination. And I use sufficient environmental sampling on purpose because we want to think about what scale and how many different methods we use for testing both air, land, and water. Sufficient sampling helps decision makers set a course of action for isolation as well as cleanup. Sufficient information allows for community to seek full compensation of damages. Coordinated sampling leads to a clearer picture, and reliable information rebuilds trust in the community. And so at this time, I would like to invite Denise. We are on the LaSalle summary of samples collected to date slide, and you can begin. And I'm wondering, should I take the microphone over to the phone?
That'd be a good idea.
Okay, Denise?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, good evening, everybody, and I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. I actually am only about a train ride and a drive from you, so if I'm ever needed, I can still come there. Just quick background about me so you know who's talking. I'm a chemical engineer by training. I was an environmental and occupational health manager for many years. I have 42 years with DuPont, so that's my background just quickly. So the summary of the samples that have been collected today. First, we'll start with what other people sampled. And on the day of the fire and the day after, the Illinois EPA, they collected samples, one soil sample and 6 white samples. They sampled the Little Vermilion River, a Carus retention pond, and an unknown pond. It's redacted on the report. So this slide is mostly to talk about what we didn't know initially and why it was so confounding at first. There wasn't a lot of information out there, and it came in bits and pieces. The gap in that report was that we really didn't know where those soil or white samples were collected from. And the one pond, like I mentioned, that was redacted. The EPA, that the day of the fire at about 4:30 in the afternoon, they set up mobile ambient air monitors, mostly north and south of the Carus site, and they ran that through noon on the 12th. And particulate matter 2.5 is a very fine particulate that gets in the air, that gets in people's lungs. It's the most hazardous because it gets into the deep lung. Those are the measurements I'm going to focus on because there really wasn't anything outstanding otherwise. But for about 12 hours, the monitor was reading in milligrams per cubic meter and not micrograms, and that's important because regulatory limits are in micrograms per cubic meter, and someone who wouldn't know any better would think that, well, these aren't too bad. These results are like 100s or 1,000s of what they should be. So that's just a comment. And then Brownfield collected gone to their presentation. They collected soil and other samples from homes surrounding Carus and a couple of parks on January 20th and the 24th. The gap in this report, among others, was that they only reported for potassium and manganese. And we obviously all knew that it was potassium for manganese, the purple and the different colors in the river and things. But we know that there was more than that, and so that was a problem. They didn't say how deep the soil samples were collected, and they sampled the rotary park pond, but they didn't sample for sediment. And I'll say just a little bit more about that. So next slide. These are just photos just to give you an idea of where the samples were collected. The one on the left is brownfield. Like I said, a lot of homes. Madison Park, Texas Park, Rotary Park. The one on the right is where the EPA placed their air monitoring stations. And the blue dots on that slide show where those are. And then the icon, the fire icon, that's Carus. So you can see a pretty good line north and south by the fire. The two circle areas were the highest results that I'll talk about in a minute. Excuse me, the one on the left is what they call it, sensitive receptor at Trinity College. Next slide. So what did we learn from the results? The Ohio's or the Illinois EPA collected more samples from the Carus site. That's what we learned ultimately. The soil sample and two of the white samples that were the worst were collected actually on the Carus property. One sample was collected from, we know for certain, from Jamie's sidewalk. But other than that, there were several that we still don't know where they were collected. They did collect like an up and down river sample from the up and down sample from the river, and it had slightly elevated chloride and zinc on the downstream side, and the pH and potassium were high in the Carus retention pond. So what does this all mean? Mostly it shows that there was more than manganese present. That results included the health metals. And we do wonder, was the material in the retention pond ultimately released? That would be the good thing for the community to know. But either way, my suggestion is that the river sediment should be sampled up and downstream because metals are heavy. They're going to sink to the bottom, but they'll keep on leaching over time. So it'd be a good thing to know what you have there. The EPA monitors for the small particulate showed a maximum level of 100 micrograms per cubic meter at about 2:35 or so in AM on the 12th. And that included that sensitive receptor I mentioned. The wind was from the north at about 8 miles per hour, and by noon on the 12th, the levels were down to 14, so pretty much normal and much lower. So the duration of the sampling was about 19 and a half hours, and the average 2.5 was 47 micrograms per cubic meter. The regulatory limit for 24-hour average, and the limit is 35. So fairly high, you could say, over that time period. Particulate in the air was fairly high. The brownfield report, we learned they sampled about 6 inches deep, the soil samples that they did collect. I would have said 0 to 3 inches because that fire just happened and everything's going to be on the surface. And they might have diluted it by taking deeper samples, but that's just my judgment. Some of the data indicates levels above regulatory limits, except there was manganese in a water runoff samples from one of the homes, and then the granular material they tested was very high in manganese and potassium. And they did talk about that when they gave their presentation. But the lack of information in this report and the others is what led the Sierra Club to decide to sample furnace filters. It was actually somebody from LaSalle that said, I pulled my furnace filter and it's black. So we decided that we would test based on that, so that does tell us a lot more. Not knowing if other metals were present in the air, that led us into the testing. And we believe, or I believe, that Carus should do more sampling at their expense. And the next slide. Excuse me, I don't know why I'm having trouble talking. This is a map that I keep. I have maps of that, and I've got maps all over the country of situations that I'm dealing with. And this happens to be, you can see the Matheson and Headwater Superfarm site with the red X. Carus is down at the bottom. It's the red factory icon. And the homes up there, the blue homes, those are all of the homes that the filters came from. And so the next slide talks about the results. So again, Jamie Dixon is who helped to coordinate. They collected 8 furnace filter samples, and those were sent to Merritt Lab in East Lansing. And we used that lab for several reasons. One is I have to count her. It's independent from anything. It's not a state lab. It's not any lab that Carus probably uses. And they have excellent service, and they're reasonably priced, so that's another great reason to use them. But the metals to test for was based on what we know Carus stores, uses, provided, and public information. The day of the fire, I was pulling toxic release inventory reports. I later got their chemical inventory report, and that's how I based my decision on what to sample for initially. Every filter that was tested had these metals on, and quite high, and a lot of metals. The various metals on them. These are the maximum results from all 8 filter samples. There was only one sample that indicated mercury. And then, again, the results show that there was more than manganese at fire fallout. The thing that I want to stress here is they don't represent airborne levels. These are in weight-to-weight measurements. So this is how much this sample weighed, and this is how much barium was in that sample. And but they do show that there was a lot of particulates that entered these folks' homes and furnaces and was captured by the filter. Filters did their job. So my recommendation here is that should look at getting the ductwork in these homes should be cleaned and no expense. And before I mention the filters, I want to suggest that what I do recommend is that everybody should change their filters. You know, especially since quite a long time was during the event, the ones from the north or south of the fire should also be looking at their filters and getting in the ductwork to see if it needs cleaned. But this filter that I mentioned is called, it's a rating, MERV 13, and it's just a little bit more high efficiency than what you would normally put in a furnace. It's recommended a lot of times for people who have asthma or COPD and things like that, already have issues with breathing. It's not the most expensive. It's going to cost a little bit more than a normal filter, but it's not terribly expensive. So that's my recommendation with that. And the last thing I want to say is that I think that my email address is going to be provided at the end of this, and I invite anybody that has questions about any of this, because I'm not sure quickly, if you have questions, to send me an email. Thank you.
have been a back catcher. We got good news.
That's what I was thinking the same thing.
Thank you, Denise. So please hold on. On the screen, you will see a QR code, and you can take your phone and zoom into that, and that takes you to a form that allows for you to fill it out if you have any questions or you would like for us to stay in contact with you. And I also have handouts. Jamie has those with just a summation of our presentation, my contact information, as well as Denise's. And so if you're interested in continuing engaging and continuing to learn, that's kind of what we're here for. We're not just dropping in to share this information. So you can learn more about the Sierra Club, and that's on the link and that's on the page, as well as the Heart of Illinois group, that if you're interested in working in this region would be kind of your home base. And then my information is on the slide as well as Denise's. It is Mila, for all the press in the room, MILA.Marshall, MARSHALL, at sierraclub.org, SIERRACLUB.org. So that is the end of our presentation, and thank you. If there are any questions, if we have time for them, maybe we can answer a few.
Does Sierra Club do those results as the
So Denise? So he asked, have we sent the EPA, have we sent the Illinois EPA or Region 5 the results from the air filter?
No, we have not.
Department of Public Health.
Have we sent it to the Department of Public Health or any other agency or entity in Illinois?
No, but I'm sure we certainly can.
Lance Yednock has it.
I have conferred with the Representative Yednock this morning because as part of our due diligence, we continue to try and follow up with the local officials, and he indicated to me that he has forwarded your information on to the EPA and that they are supposedly reviewing it and working on getting an appropriate response. And we're also going to, if they haven't been already, see that they get sent to the Illinois Department of Public Health as well to get their input so that we get input from everyone. As you know, the Sierra Club was invited here this evening originally by the mayor at the last city council meeting. I'm not sure whether you ever had the opportunity to appear at the Village of Rockton. When I conferred with their officials, they didn't mention it. If you did, perhaps you did. I know you said you appeared with the at the EPA meetings. I don't know if the village had any meetings where they invited you or not, but the mayor has invited you here for your input.
Did Kimtron do like a town hall?
Kimtool and Rockton? I'm not sure. I wasn't brought, so we work as a team. I was tagged for you all. Lucky you. But we did.
We really feel this is Carus who need to be up here, hearing the stuff. And they're going to hear about it, but it's like, hey.
Yeah, so we work with multiple stakeholders, right? And so we were of the mind both to speak with Brownfield to understand what it is they did, what lab they used, because that would be great to know, as well as making contact with the company. So in my role, I work with wastewater treatment facilities, private businesses. There's nobody we won't talk to, and that's mostly to help people understand, where information is coming from. It's best to get it firsthand. So we do look forward to, reaching out to them to see what their strategy is, whether it is communicating with the public, making sure that information is accurate on our side on how to, connect with them, as well as lift up any other concerns that maybe are not as visible to Carus that people are comfortable telling us. And plus, we're the Sierra Club, and so when we call and we, ask questions, it has a different presence sometimes as an environmental group than just we're here to help elevate voices. So, yeah. And thank you for inviting us. It's tense, right? Because there's people's property is damaged and people's health is damaged and people's future plans, right? So whether it's birthday parties outside or soccer season is starting, little baseball, everybody is wondering what is going on. And so that can be a really tense time for everyone. And so your neighbors, and having an industrial neighbor.
It's important that it sounds like folks who did testing got the information back too.
And we appreciate that. Thank you for forwarding that.
That's all right. And we've also, for your information, Senator Representative Yednock As I understand, you also sent it to Senator Resin, because I think they're both working, doing the best they can on all of these issues that are going on. And Representative Yadnot forwarded a copy to us too. We didn't have it. The numbers, obviously, we need expert input. But we've also forwarded it on to Brownfield too for their review and input as well.
Wonderful.
Because we're interested in getting as many resources and reasonable science input. Mayor and the council are. That's one of the reasons why LaSalle retained an independent company. Didn't suggest they would get all the testing right the first time, but this is a collaborative effort, and that's why your input was welcomed by the mayor.
We appreciate that. Thank you. Yes.
Did I understand Denise say she did not help you?
So Denise, the question was, is it accurate that it wasn't clear to you from the first report? Is that right? The depth of the soil samples that Brownfield did?
Right, it wasn't clear to me. I didn't see anything in the report that gave that information.
Mr. Brown, the engineer, can you clarify that?
Brownfield.
The Brownfield sample, that's what he's referring to.
Mr. Brown the Brownfield sample said you stay close to the surface because that's where you expect the highest concentration to be.
No, sir, 6 inches. I checked the hole that they poked in my yard.
Did that when there's clay that far down? I thought you.
I personally, I think I remember our engineer, Mr. Brian, saying that the samples that were taken by Brownfield were mimic the ones that the EPA did in the past.
These last ones that we ain't even talked about yet.
They're like 6 inches or something.
Contamination.
That was from March.
My daughter's yard was remediated. So this is the last samples that Brownfield took, I think is what he's talking about. Her yard was never remediated. So we were going to compare the samples between her yard according to the same test that the EPA took. And they came back, yeah, you guys don't even want to know, but I got, we'll talk about that here in a little bit, but it didn't come back good, I can tell you that. And it's not good.
Compared to the EPA ones.
Yes, and I'm surprised that Brian Brown's not here to explain some of that, but I can break it down to you really good.
I have a question. We went through all these tests. Is the ground safe? Can you run your dogs out in the yard? Can you drink the water? We did all this testing and all the numbers, and I just, part of people are scared to let their dogs out. Can you let your kids play in the yard? Is it safe?
So Denise, the question is, how safe or is it safe for people to be on and outside, touching soil, animals outside, in gardens, food production?
Yeah, I could hear him very clearly. Let me thank everybody first. I'm sorry for the invitation, because that is a great thing that he invited us, that you wanted to learn more about what we learned. But it's a tough call on whether the dogs and the kids are safe. I think you might have had quite a bit of rain. I know we've had snow, and I've heard that you've got some rain. That will help. But I think the main thing with kids and with dogs too, if they get a lot of dirt on them, is to clean them off right away. The metals that we're finding are things that are they're chronic hazards for one thing. They don't go through skin, but the issue with children especially is, they play outside, they get their hands dirty, they eat candy, they chew gum, they do things. That means they're ingesting it. So, washing their hands is really important. If you're worried about the dog, especially initially, I would have been terrified to let my dogs outside with that manganese out there, because that can burn the skin. But now I think with metals, that's the main thing. Is just be cautious. Whether it's in the garden or not is of concern too. Some metals will take up into plants. A lot of metals will go up into plants. So you might want to consider scraping off the topsoil and putting on some clean. It's on your garden at least. Sorry, I can't help any more than that, other than, cleaning it up again like they did for the Superfund site. I don't think you need that much, but you do need to be cautious, at least for a while.
I know there's a lot of talk of, personal litigation going on, so you might be called on to assist those folks when it's time for that.
Yeah, that's no problem. I wanted to say too that I compiled the data into spreadsheets, and you mentioned sending it to the health department and such. If you want copies of my spreadsheets, let me know and I'll send them to you.
That would be fantastic. Even, this presentation, if you could send that to them as well.
Oh, absolutely.
I would really like to have them have access to all this, give us some, feedback.
Did you have anything to do with Kimtron?
No, I did not. I can.
I didn't know if Denise did.
Oh, Denise, did you work on the Rockton issue?
Yeah, I did. I helped Steve Hall with the sampling of the PFAS in the river.
Did you pass on that information to the EPA, or is it up to that kind of the local groups? Do you recall?
I didn't catch all that. I'm sorry.
He said, was that information passed to EPA, or was that at the discretion of the other organizations that were working on the cleanup?
Yeah, I left that to the local people. I provided the data and the explanation of the data. One of the things that we did when we sampled is we ran what they call total oxidizable precursors. We're getting a little technical here, but what that does is, so you run the river water sample for PFAS, and then you run the second sample and they oxidize it, and it sort of mimics what will happen in the environment, and it will tell you down the road what might end up being, what PFAS compounds might be there. And we ran that, and there were several compounds that didn't show up in the Illinois EPA data, but it did show up in ours, and especially those top assay samples. So if you want copies of that too, I can send them, but that's how I go.
If this test is getting done, I don't know why the Sierra Club's not elevating it to a higher level authority that has authority over like Contamination or Carus. Is that just your protocol?
No, I actually generally, when I help a community, but I'm talking about people that have like long-term remediation going on, not like a Superfund site, but say they've got a contaminated site nearby. I do interact with the agency and provide them the information. When it's something in a different state like this one I'm helping anyway, I'll offer it, but it's really up to the community.
So is the city asking them to provide this? So I think there's the city asking the Sierra Club to provide the information that they get.
Yeah, we'd love to pass. We can't, but going to like Lance or Sue Resident, those are folks who kind of direct the IEP at least.
Right.
But it sounds like they're already doing that, and I believe some of the locals that they did give last step results already, which is good. So that process is going. Right. I just didn't realize it's in the hands of the community and not the Sierra Club giving it to the.
Yeah, it's a partnership, right? Yeah, so when we work with communities and we ask them, we kind of identify what the needs are. We then create a strategy with them. And so sometimes it turns into a town hall with IDNR and IEPA and IDOA, Department of Ag, for example. And we help with identifying who are the important people as well as what are the questions who's going to ask them. So but that all comes from the community.
Let's say that group didn't act on it and you knew that there was an issue. It just died.
No, I wouldn't say that it dies. We still lift it up, but if the people on the ground are not going to continue to carry it forward and press it at the chapter level, there's only so much that we can do, right? So I'm based in Chicago. There's something going on in Cahokia Heights, and they need to talk to their state representatives, and it's me that state representative is looking like, but you're in Chicago. And so that's what we do with capacity building and identifying who those leaders and champions are, because we give them the tools and we work collaboratively. So you have the residents, you have the Sierra Club group, you have the chapter and our allies, but we all have to do it together. So sometimes it takes for literacy and education as well as some courage building, because these things are really complicated. And so if you're intimidated by the content, then it's very hard to feel like you can make a difference. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here, is to kind of use my voice to say, we all have some learning to do. It is a learning curve, but you have specialists and experts and PhDs, and you are an expert in your own right. And when we leverage our voices together, decision makers and residents, we can actually impact change at many levels. Yes.
Where do all the heavy metals come from? Are they a byproduct of contamination?
So Denise, the question is, where would the lead come from? Is it a byproduct of the potassium permanganate?
No, it's in other products that they make. They handle all those that were on my list here. They handle barium, copper, lead, manganese, zinc, and mercury. I'm not sure. That might be a contaminant in one of their products, but this is what they report when they report their toxic release inventory, and they report what they store. These are some of the metals that they report that they release.
So to clarify, the TRI report is available publicly online, and they have to communicate what it is that they release into the atmosphere. And so what Denise did was pull up that report to identify what other metals would be or could possibly be or have been emitted from that fire. So that's how she deduced these are some of the things that we should test for.
To clarify really quickly, would those metals have been released as a result of the fire, or could they have been released through general operation through that kind of work?
So the question is there a way to discriminate if those metals were already in existence and kind of a byproduct of their operations, or is there a way to identify if they were a result of the fire?
There's not really a way to determine whether this is from daily emissions or from the fire. I would say just the pure volume is telling us it's probably from the fire. One of the things I've told people when they do change their filters is a couple months later to look at them again to see what they look like. It might be residual in the ductwork, but, just kind of start getting an idea of what's happening on an ongoing basis. I do know I've got a copy and I've looked at their air permit. Yeah, they're emitting these particulates that would probably contain these metals. Now they've got dust collectors and things like that, but they still are emitting this material, these metals.
I don't want to keep going back and forth. Is that emission a normal part of production for facilities like this, or is it an abnormal amount of emission?
So, you heard it?
I could hear him, yeah. It would be normal for probably any kind of facility like this that handles all these powdered materials. They have to capture it and run it through dust collectors and things like that to keep the emissions down, but there's going to be some emissions. I think the last air report that they did, and it's going to be in tons, and it's going to sound like a lot, but I think they reported like 25 or 29 tons of particulate to the air.
I was going to add, our family had replaced our filter that day and thrown it out, but we are sending ours in. It's been in our home for 6 weeks. Just because after looking at this, where our homes are located, we're right in the path of that entire smokestack every single day. So it would be curious to see if our home has more than, say, our neighbors. And it would be a clean sample, basically, after the fire.
I have one of those too.
Yeah, I think it's definitely at this point, after there's been so much misinformation, let's try to get real science behind us. And I have one more question for everybody. Is the hope of the mayor and the Sierra Club and the EPA to finally get Carus to make some kind of response like, we're sorry we did this, we're going to try to help you guys, because I'm not feeling any of that from Carus at all. We've submitted our insurance paperwork. We're at 5 weeks. We've heard 0. So, and we only submitted something minor, like what we cost us to go to to get our cars cleaned. Has anyone heard or received a check from Carus? Because we submitted so little and they have yet to pay us.
No, and not
paid my wife's car.
not one of us in here to make it known.
Last they said was that they were sending an appraiser.
State Farm paid it.
That was the other day.
Harris, Davies Group, not a word.
So that's what we would like the city to try to. I mean, great, LaSalle News Tribune can post a fluff piece about how great they are, but let's really post the fact that they have not responded to any of the homeowners about anything.
That's
That's
just
my
it.
whole issue.
That not one person in this whole room has ever come in here and praised Carus Chemical for what they've done. But in the paper and in pieces you guys write, you're praising them in your letterheads that aren't even dated. I mean, it's kind of insane.
Does anybody here work with insurance?
You can. They call that stonewalling, sir. Do you know what that means? It's called stonewalling. Avoiding the question.
I don't know what the process is with insurance.
You don't know the process of anything. I'm sorry, but Jesus Christ.
For those of us who have State Farm, they are trying, but the amount of testing that they have to do and the amount that we have to get bids.
He is the worst mayor I've
and
ever seen in
over
my
and
life.
over again. I mean, just for what many of us make an hour, we spent 2 or 3 days and hours alone just trying to get the paperwork necessary to try to get even everything outside covered. I mean, all of us have our grills and just all of that paperwork to just fill it out takes an awful lot of time. And the truth is those of us that are deeply impacted, Carus should be apologizing to us, talking to us. We should have our own adjusters there. If they're going to have an insurance company, why don't they have adjusters? Why don't they have feet on the street?
They're claiming they're coming. They're trying to twist them.
The other day they said they were coming.
Yeah, I've seen nobody, and I've asked.
No,
I follow
they
up with
didn't
them
show up. Don't
every
believe
48
it.
hours and say, do you have the status of my claim? Because they're supposed to have all this stuff online. Come on, these are not like run-of-the-mill insurance companies. These are large insurance companies. They have a process.
He wants to get their life.
So, Denise, the question is, are you familiar with the process of compensation and reparations for homeowners in Rockton with Kim Toole?
No, I'm not. I'm sorry.
But that is something that I could find out, right? So if the community wishes to move forward with organizing and identifying what the priority ask is, then that's something that we do, right? But that also takes someone.
This is, this is the first time I ever dealt with this. We ever dealt with this. Is this what is expected?
So it could be litigation.
2 months. I just want to know.
Yeah, it could be litigation where the city sues Carus, right? And that very well could be it.
Good luck with that.
They got an open account. They're not going to sue Carus.
But then also it is if the community wishes to put pressure on the city council to do what it is that they feel is right, we help that conversation.
We've been doing that since day one.
Well, we might have a different outcome, right? And so when we work together, there might be some opportunities also working with state representatives and other elected officials. Because we are in this place where around Illinois we're seeing chemical fires and people impacted pretty much every other week or every other month. It's something that EPA Region 5 is taking seriously, and communities as they deal with it, it might be your first time dealing with it, but you can turn around and look to, a grain fire or, Palatine in Ohio. And here we are living in the Great Lakes with all of these industries and factories kind of taking advantage of the fact that there is possibly weak oversight by our state agencies. And so some of it might be putting pressure on IEPA, for example, that these might have to happen at different levels. But that takes for people to understand how laws are made, what you can do at your municipal level, what you can do at the county level. Sometimes that even involves running for office, right? And so we do help people identify what the strategy is, both to kind of tackle the issue at hand, as well as what does the future look like moving forward. And that could very well mean looking at the ordinance to see, what does changing zoning look like? Is that a conversation that needs to be had? What does it look like for auditing and oversight? What does it look like for making sure that people pay their fines, or are fines reasonable? Should there be a committee or working committee for making decisions on where it is these facilities are placed?
So it might be time to think about what does sustainability and environmental equity look like in LaSalle and who or what type of expertise is needed, because there might be a conversation on a line item for a full-time staff member who is focused on safety and climate change and sustainability and things like that. And so, like I said, I'm here to help LaSalle understand what are the options moving forward. As I've read in the news, we know that this company is now moving its product to another city. And so we also are in conversation with Ottawa, Illinois, to make sure that they understand what's happening here. And so that there can be some communication and regionalization approach for we're protecting our community, and that doesn't just mean here in the city boundaries, that this air has no boundary, these waters have no boundary. And so we do have to work together to make sure that everybody on the path that's receiving or the movement of these products understands who they are, how to protect themselves, and make sure that they are good neighbors. So,
Mila?
Yes.
In regard to your investigation in Country Rockland, perhaps Denise could do it. There is litigation up there, but it's been brought by the private citizens themselves for the most part. Isn't that correct?
I am unsure.
We've been monitoring it to try and reach out to other cities such as Rockton and Morris, and I haven't seen any litigation. EPA jumped in and sued both in Rockton and also in Morris. And the counties joined, but certainly, and I conferred with counsel for the EPA in regards to the Morris litigation. And to my knowledge, neither of those municipalities commenced any litigation themselves. I think they were more facilitators, which LaSalle is trying to do at this point, although we're exploring all of our potential options here. That's why you've been invited to be here. But I was just wondering if we're mistaken on that, or if there was any litigation commenced by either any of the municipalities there. Because what I saw was the EPA sued in both Morris and in Winnebago County as well.
So I am unaware if the cities themselves, because I'm new to it, but I could find out even if they're thinking about moving forward with it.
My understanding of discussions with them, there was nothing, but you could talk with them yourself under consideration in that regard. In fact, I don't think either of those communities even engaged any engineer to do the testing that LaSalle did to get an expert. We're trying to do everything we can for the residents, and that's why you've been invited here.
It's a paintbrush. You're painting it up really good for the news. You got more information on this than you got on that Tier 2 chemical storage facility that's caving into my backyard. How and why? It's a paintbrush. This is...
We're interested in...
Yeah, you're interested in one thing.
Well, at least
saving somebody's ass.
blowing smoke, like you said to Jamie, even though Jamie gave some of the same information. So I do appreciate that they're being more respectful to you than they have been.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So, I have another question.
Yes.
So the plastic release inventory is an annual report that Carus puts out that had all of the various manganese, lead, copper, all of those other things. Who gets that report?
So we have the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, Safe Drinking Water Act, Safe Drinking Water Act. Every facility has to have a permit or permission to pollute. Those permits are distributed by Environmental Protection Agency. Usually in Illinois, well, we've been given oversight. So Illinois EPA approves those permits. They have to provide that information in a time period, and then it's posted online. So the public can find it. It is a bit challenging to find it on your own, but yeah, we can provide links for identifying or how to identify violations, for example. So you can find pollution discharge elimination system permits, but there's an entirely different website for tracking violations. It's called ECHO, Environmental Compliance History. And so you can identify what factory or what business is in violation of their permit, and that's completely separate.
So I guess my next question or point would be, if the EPA is very well aware of the toxic release, how could they come in front of the city and the residents and say it's just potassium, manganese, and there's nothing to, there's nothing to see here. They know what chemicals they released in the
So if you don't mind, I'll try and rephrase it for Denise. So Denise, the question is, if Illinois EPA and Region 5 are aware of emissions of Carus through the toxic release inventory, can you share why it is that those entities did not test for those metal products?
Well, really, it was Brownfield that didn't test for all the metals. And then the Illinois EPA had, I don't know why their focus was, but their focuses seemed to be on what contaminants were at Carus and some of what was off-site from Carus, and they did all the metals as well. It was Brownfield that did not. But I want to mention on the toxic release inventory, that's very easy information to get. I've compiled that too, if you want that. A good amount of what they report on their toxic release inventory is what they send to waste. So it isn't just a release to air, it's a release to water and waste, where the waste is shipped. The toxic release inventory has all of that.
Is that a one time a year?
The report is.
July 1st is when it's due, so the new information usually comes out a couple months afterwards in the public domain.
So is the city of LaSalle aware of
We did not get the report. I shared about that, like mentioned, it goes right to the state level.
Yeah, it goes to the state and the region, the federal. And then the toxic, so the chemical inventory, like what do they store, that goes to the local emergency planning committee, the fire department, and the state.
You ask if
Yeah, they know. Ooh, on the 25th.
Did you hear Victoria from?
Does the state's lab run metals? Is that what you asked?
Did IEPA and Region 5 identify the metal products in their samples in any concentration, the ones that you shared on your slide?
Yes, but the state you're talking about, I get confused with this. So the state, they did 1 soil sample and 6 white samples. And they did run all the metals on those.
how are those levels?
They're asked how are those levels?
The ones that were really high that alarmed me when I first got them, turns out were collected right on Carus property. The one of the sidewalk at Jamie's house had manganese and antimony in particular were a little bit high. But white samples it's a 4-inch square, and it represents what's on that surface, but it, again, doesn't tell you a whole lot about, unless you're going to put your hand on that surface, it doesn't tell you a lot about what your exposure is going to be. It just says, yeah, there's a lot of fallout here that had some metals in it.
So Denise, can you clarify what form of sampling method you would suggest, not the wipe sample? What would have been a better way to test?
For the possible impacts to the community, is that the question?
Were they took the life samples, what would she recommend be done instead?
If you were a part of this sampling team, what would have been your recommendation, if not the wipe sample?
Well, I don't know what they were wanting to accomplish. So there was the white samples that I did ultimately see pictures or photos of where they collected them, okay, of the 2 or 3 that they collected at the Carus property. They collected white samples that were practically in the middle of one of those colorful puddles. So that to me wasn't a very meaningful test. Testing Jamie sidewalk and maybe these other samples that were tested on surfaces where people were going to be might be useful, and just like I said, it would tell how much is on the surface of whatever it is they tested. I probably would have done a lot more soil sampling, surface soil sampling, and in a broader, maybe even the same locations as brownfield, but I would have done much shallower and would have recommended that we run all metals.
So they're producing this report, it's going to the state every year, but no one's double checking to make sure they're saying or doing what they should be saying or doing?
So that's where IEPA comes in for their permit. And so they will go in and see if they're emitting more, then they're in violation of their permit, and they do their job.
How often do they do that?
That is a good question.
Because it sounds like that they've been releasing this stuff for a very long time, and then they had a catastrophic event, and no one's oversighting them. That they're just getting by with whatever they want to get by with, and we're breathing it in every day. So
yes, right? Every factory, every industry emits because they are allowed to, right? So if I have a factory and I say, this is what I'm doing, this is my byproduct, and I'm gonna put it down the drain, it's gonna go through the wastewater treatment facility and into the Little Vermilion, IEPA is gonna say, well, this is how much you can discharge, this is how much you have to disinfect, this is the volume, this is the temperature it has to be in order for you to be in compliance, right? Under the Clean Water Act or Drinking Water Act. I have to comply with that. The public, however, can look at that permit and say, no, we don't like this. We want this discharge flow rate to change. So you have an opportunity. However, the permits are highly technical. Sierra Club, we track all of the water permits in the state of Illinois, from Department of Natural Resources to NIPID's permits to 404s and 401s with the Army Corps of Engineers. We work with communities and local organizations to identify which permits they absolutely do not want to be passed. But that takes people, 1, to be interested, 2, to have the time, and 3, to work collaboratively with us to learn how to push back on permits. And so we can ask for a public hearing to really talk to IEPA or DNR to say why it is we don't want this permit to move forward, or we can then sue, which the Sierra Club often does. Without the community, we will say, no, this permit is definitely something that we don't want to happen. But every factory, every business pollutes. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Can I mention that Carus's air permit is up for renewal, I think, December of this year, which means that they're going to have to be submitting an application here pretty soon, and there'll be, public review and such towards the end of the year. So I have a note to keep on checking for that, but others should, people locally should start looking for that too.
Oh, you know it.
I guess my concern is that they can't take sufficient sampling during a catastrophic event, but we're supposed to trust that they've been sampling correctly for years.
Welcome to my world, sister. It does take all of us to help hold everyone accountable. And that's what we also do at the Sierra Club. We have meetings with IEPA and DNR, addressing permits, addressing, legislation. So that's what we do. And we do it collaboratively. Sometimes the environmental, groups, we disagree on strategy, and sometimes we work together. We work at different levels, different geographies, but there are tools to, kind of stop permits and hold people accountable. So Denise, do you believe that more air monitors, do you mean like long-term, long-term air monitors in the city of LaSalle? Do you think that would be valuable?
I think it would. You've got a lot of mineral and a lot of plants like Carus where there's a lot of particulate emissions. And when I did look at what stationary monitors there were out there. I'm thinking there was one other Peru, but there was some Joliet. Does that sound right? Yeah, so it's a ways away, so it might not be a bad idea to look at getting a stationary nearby air monitoring station.
Seneca Cell or Jeff Seneca?
For those stationary air monitors, who's the owner of those?
That's a state thing. I can check to see how you would go about getting or requesting. I mean, there's some you can purchase. You can purchase some, much less expensive types of monitors, but I think it's the state that would determine the location of a new station.
Sometimes novel part.
I should say, I'll check and see what that would entail. You probably have to build a case and say, we've got this industry and this industry and, the prevailing winds and all that. We think that we need a stationary monitor close by.
So would that be something to work with the president and representative
Other novel strategies are, is there a university close by?
We have a community college, but those would be the only state.
Okay, so sometimes it's conversations with academic institutions and seeing if there's opportunity for grants for, to work with graduate students, for example. So we also look at novel ways of creating information and working with our scholars in the state as well.
We have one at the library that I believe is through the University of Illinois Champaign, but the library is off kitty corner over here. It's a substantial amount away from getting fairly accurate readings from Carus.
Well, since they're already present, it might be a good opportunity. So these are some of the things that also the Sierra Club can help kind of coalesce. So identifying who that person is or the point person, talking about how did that air monitoring station get there? Would they be interested in expanding that program? What would that look like? If not them, could they make recommendations for other institutions that might be interested in, kind of post-disaster air quality, or is there a graduate student? And so it's not just kind of talking to state lawmakers. It is identifying who are the people that like to collect information and provide solutions, and it's typically our state scholars as well.
I have a meeting with the director of the library on Wednesday. I'll bring that up and we'll talk and find out who's monitoring it, who's having all the information.
Thank you, Jim.
Am I out of the hot seat?
Never more.
So, all the filters that were sampled, so all of them contain all those metals?
Denise, all of the filters that were sampled contained all of the metals. Is that correct?
Yes. Every metal we tested for was in every sample.
Except for mercury, right?
Right, that was in the one.
Right, except for mercury is only in one of them.
Can you share why would only one have mercury and not the rest?
I don't know why that is. I mean, I looked at the location versus the other ones, because I have a rough idea where the homes were. There's no explanation that I know of. I can't think of one. And they were low levels of mercury.
I heard I put it there. Yeah, I heard that too.
So you talk about empowering communities to get involved and handle these kind of things, but Carus assumes themselves as community advocates, but their silence is very loud. How do we get them involved to be here, to be involved with us to fix this problem? Yeah.
So working with stakeholders is
I was told, little birdie, we got lots of little birdies around here, but they hired a PR firm. The PR firm says no way they're coming up in here and talking about shit.
That's unfortunate because they talk about being community advocates.
All in the
That's not
paper.
being a community advocate.
That's how they want the paper to portray them.
Indirect communication.
It's called twisting the media.
So we have brilliant organizers that work, and I think it depends on what's the end game. Like, what's the goal? Is the goal to make friends, or is the goal to hold someone
Accountable.
Right? And so their presence or their absence speaks volumes, to your point, but that doesn't mean that work still cannot be done. And so in the event that there is litigation, now you have to show them. So sometimes it is, they're present when it's absolutely necessary. There are ways to get information. I don't know if you all have neighbors, friends, and family that work in the facility. We deal with all sorts of issues and different stakeholders. We have an Illinois Department of Corrections, for example, and there's a water crisis. People sometimes don't want to come to the table because they can't. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors, and they've been advised not to say anything. This is a business after all. And so some of the strategy is continue to move forward with what does the community want and or need, and helping support you all to get to the next phase. Both, the residents as well as the decision makers to understand what are the opportunities, what are the options. You're welcome.
So earlier tonight you had mentioned something about bringing awareness. Part of the Sierra Club's goal is to bring awareness to the municipal league, the state level, the citizens that were. In your opinion, is the city of LaSalle, are we doing what we should be doing, or what else could we do to make things better for our residents?
I think my first recommendation would be to listen to the residents genuinely and take them seriously the first time. Identifying organizations and or trusted sources of information and bringing them in, just like you did this evening. This is rare that, we're invited in this way. We usually, are invited by residents to help them speak up. And so I think that's a really good place to start. Similar to the Rockton, if there are concerns about health, I'm not a medical professional, but there might be an opportunity to create a health-focused town hall where there is a pediatrician, there is a veterinarian, someone who has worked on metals and things like that. And then sometimes they're not from our community. They're not from Illinois, for example. And so we can identify, researchers or people that have experience that can help people, understand what is going on, answer questions completely separate from decision makers. So if the community is interested in something like that, then that's also, an opportunity. I am so unfamiliar with insurance, but that's a great point. Like, who do you talk to? Who are those individuals? What does that look like? That might be a different organizer that can help the community with understanding who in our network can help them make sense of what is going on. Is that going to change the strategy or the ask, for example? So Denise, do you have any other recommendations or reflections on how the city of LaSalle has been handling this situation?
No, all you said was good. No, I don't really have. I do have a drafted letter that I've been waiting for Sonia to critique, and she said it was a good letter, but I haven't got her, okay, go ahead and send it. And what it is I'm going to send it to about, I would say 6 or 7 EPA different division people, and I have a litany of issues with Carus. So besides the fire and besides them not having a good emergency response plan in place and a couple of things like that, they are sending their waste to their own landfill in Ottawa, and tons of problems with that. So I've got this letter ready to go, and it will definitely get people's attention, I think. So that's one of the things that I'm going to do. I think what the town is doing while you're sitting here right now listening to people, and that's one of the best things. So.
You referencing Carus.
Denise, you were referencing Carus's the lack.
Yeah, my understanding is that it's a generic plan. I'm very familiar with this problem. They really need to critique how they did when they did the emergency. Now, I read the human resource person thought they did a great job, but I'm sure that there's things that they can improve on. And they should be open and inviting to the community to tell you what they found. Do we know the cause yet? They need to investigate the cause and figure out how they'll keep it from ever happening again. And they have to have a better emergency response plan. These generic ones just don't get it.
I know the cost.
Well, and Mayor Grove, I just have one more question. So meanwhile, well, none of us are getting a response from Carus. They write this crap in the paper. I'm sorry. Are they even responding to your calls? Because you have to listen to us complain on a weekly basis. And are they addressing you as a human being and saying, I'm taking all the heat for all of my citizens? What are they doing when you pick up the phone?
Why are we carrying water on this station? Why don't you demand them to come? Why don't you demand
Yes. Just like we want you to demand they close the Tier 2 chemical storage facility. We're not shutting it down. How did it get approved?
All you have to do is go in there and inspect the building. I'll guarantee you could shut it down in 1
I feel
second.
like you're taking the heat for a situation they created, and I get that there was probably some oversight in monitoring some things, but we're a small community, and I don't think we were well prepared for this catastrophic event, or even monitoring everything how we should have, and we won't even get into the apology yet. But I will say this. If he's not answering your phone, if Inga's not picking up and answering your phone call, but you're listening to all of us, what on earth thinks that they're going to do absolutely anything? And do you have the legal resources as a city to go after them and say, we demand answers for our citizens? Like, what repercussions do you actually have? Because, I mean, she's going to dinner with the governor of Illinois and probably in bed with half the other people. So what do you have to go up against to get us results on anything?
That's a good question. That'd be for Jim. What legal?
Well, that's a very complicated question, but the initial question is if there is to be legal action, entities which have the resources in place, the EPA, the IEMA, the state agencies, the Attorney General, that deal with these types of cases all the time. I'm sure that Sierra Club sees them often involved. Now, they're involved in a different way in Morrison and Grundy, because what I understand, they're going for cleanup costs and things like that. I do understand in checking on, because we have been trying to do our due diligence, notwithstanding what some may think. I think better than from every other community, we've reached out even to
We're LaSalle. We're not a different community. We're LaSalle.
And that's what we're trying to do.
And
more
Carus Chemical is a
finish?
different plant than what you're speaking about in Rockton. I'm sorry.
Well, Rockton was a
You cannot
chemical
compare
plant.
it to it.
No, you can't. Everything is different, but then you can consider input from everywhere else.
You do a lot of homework on stupid
Chemtron
stuff.
had at least hired an independent, from what I understand, contractor to get involved in cleanup. Now, I don't know how quick, but they got it. I haven't heard that Carus has done that. I think it's a reasonable request for the city to say, what is your position? When are you going to get to addressing these things for the constituents?
It's March
so that the
6th.
city doesn't have to continue. We have, in effect, every 2 weeks have conducted public meetings, listened to comments, respected their input, and have listened.
Whoa!
Not everybody was
Not
respectful
everybody
out
was
there.
respectful.
Well, I'm saying in the main. And
I'd like to talk to you when we're done tonight, too, sir.
well, I'll be willing to talk to you.
Okay.
And to be respectful. And certainly we can look into our resources too. But then those types of cases require, as you know from your experience, substantial expert expense and cost and substantial resources. And it seems that we could also look to the EPA to help us with that. If they believe there's an issue. If they believe there's an issue. Sierra Club has brought forward some things that they maintain are information that needs further investigation. And that's why council asked you to be here.
So
we're open to everything.
I would also lift up the Environmental Law and Policy Center, ELPC, and they provide legal services across the Midwest. So that might be an avenue or a resource, for example. In Chicago, we have dealt with chronic polluters through through pushing to deny zoning permits, for example. When people want to relocate or they have to be renewed, where it's like, yeah, no, we don't want city council to renew this permit, which means that you can't operate. And so there might be tools at the city council level that changes the way in which entities are allowed to operate or what it is that is required for them to be in compliance with your city ordinances. But again, I'm not sure what opportunities there are at that level, and it might be useful to have a conversation. I think the response of Carus also is kind of opens up the door for how the city responded. How many other factories or industrial facilities are in the city of LaSalle? Are you ready for another one of these? What would it look like if 6 months from now, on another side of town, there's another explosion? Well, you're in the process of dealing with one, and now there's a new one. And so we know that things like that could possibly happen. What type of rapid response reflection is the city of LaSalle going to do? Is communications on point, right? How does that information flow? It can be everything from an assessment of information flow to how it is we're keeping people up to date. Is the website useful, or is there social media? Should we create a rapid response? What does that look like? How much is that going to cost? Because cities are always thinking about money. And so that might be something to reflect on moving forward, as well as if there is, weekly updates to make sure that people understand, we had a conversation, with these entities, and these were the findings, full transparency of who talked to who, what was the goal of the conversation, and how are you all moving forward. It might be useful to reflect on a small working group that's made up of business owners, homeowners, and elected officials. So there are lots of opportunities to keep the conversation going. But I think I just want to leave on this note of, with these types of neighbors, it is important that cities understand how to stick together and prepare. Because if there is another, even if it's with Carus or someone else, it is really stressful to always be in crisis mode. And with climate change and, heat events or rain events or even COVID and an explosion, we could possibly be looking at two crises happening at the same time. And so this might be a good place to pause and reflect on, how are we going to prepare for not when, but if, because many of these factories are old. They are due for something to go wrong or go bad. So understanding where they are, where is it in, relationship to your commercial corridor? Where is our drinking water? How close is it to our wastewater treatment facility? What is it that we're looking at? Who don't we want to come to the city of LaSalle? Just because you want to operate here, are we going to have a moratorium on chemical factories? Is that something we need to talk about? How close should they be to residents? Should there be an industrial corridor? And what does the response look like for people that are within a certain vicinity of these areas? How does the city support them to make sure that those who are on the front line of those neighbors feel confident and safe? And what is the requirement of them to operate in your city? Meaning you expect for them to have monthly meetings or community outreach. They need to provide a report, in order to be in compliance. I don't know, but it is my hopes that, everyone leaves here inspired to continue engaging and organizing. And so, again, if you're kind of like passionate, like I'm in it, the Sierra Club group is the Heart of Illinois group. They are ready. They already know that I'm here. They're ready to receive community members. And I will make sure that I am, even though I'm water, I'll still be around helping find resources and help make decisions moving forward. Oh, yeah, that's what I saw. That's what I saw. Yeah, I am an alcoholic. Somebody was like, why would you put that on there? I'm like, no, I'm not alcoholic.
The first time I said that.
No,
Aquaholic, yeah. Yeah. So it's running late. Any
That's
other
her mantra.
questions? Yes, it
I
is.
have a question.
Yes.
Is it normal? It's very disappointing the way Carus is handling. So, with you or Denise's experience, is that how they're told? Are they told by the female firm like JP alluded to? Like, is that the way they handle big companies where they totally go?
Yes. Yes. This is why we have environmental injustice. This is why we have environmental racism. This is par for the course, my friend. This is what these companies do. This is why we have concentrated hotspots. It is absolutely what they do. And they have the money to protect themselves to do it. And so litigation is expensive. It's really hard for a city or a resident or a small nonprofit, even with our experts, to be able to, you know, afford a long drawn out case. And so it is not easy, whether it is a pig farm, you know, like a confined animal feeding operation and neighbors next to them getting, you know, pig waste blown on their property and their property values decreasing by $30,000. Or it's a black community next to a coal factory that has the highest rates of asthma and people dying of weird cancer. Oh, we don't know who's responsible for that. This is what Illinoisans deal with every single day. And even though these companies provide tax resources, they're cutting our lives. They're causing harm to our businesses. They're decreasing our property value. And to be cities in a place with the world's largest sources of drinking water is a place that it shouldn't happen anywhere. But we do have to understand, like, these companies, they will do, they will try and get away with everything they possibly can. And we have to work together to stop them and hold them accountable.
I hope so, because historically, Carus has been disappointing to this entire community and the surrounding area. I hope so.
Me too.
Historically, really, you know, it's disappointing.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks, Denise.
I was only going to talk about need. I put a lot to say.
Is there any other discussion tonight, folks, on this topic?
I would like to say something if you don't mind.
And then I want to say a couple things too.
And I don't want to get all excited, so I'm going to respect you guys, and I hope you all respect me tonight. I want to thank y'all for letting Sierra Club come. I really appreciate you there giving me that opportunity to get these things here. I don't know how many of you guys are aware of what went down today, but it seems like every day there's something that we find out that's going on at shady Carus. We've got video of purple magnesium, or potassium permanganate all over the ground up behind the plant.
Here's photos, you guys are welcome to
Yes,
hold on to
please
them
pass
in
them
case
around.
somebody doesn't look at Facebook or doesn't know what he's talking about.
It's all over the place. And you can peep the video, it's on my Facebook. It clearly shows we're trying to hide what they were doing. The pump bottles that they always have by their side. Some guys wearing Tyvek suits, some guys wearing masks, and other guys standing like this. This isn't the first picture I've had of this. When it was pouring down rain, I have pictures of them pouring rain that they say the water is what we use to flush it with. I have pictures of them with spray bottles, two guys spraying it before it goes into the city sewer. I'm told this product, all it does is take the purple out. That's what I'm told. It does not deneutralize it in any way. The person who took the video, I give him credit because it took a lot of courage to do what they did to walk up to the gentleman and get that video because the truck cut her off. He didn't want her.
For the record, that was me. I was the one who did the video recording. I'm the one who did the photos. Keep in mind, I blew that up to an 8x10. I got it off my cell phone. So actually the brightness of the color and the extent of the color was actually more in real life than what the pictures are showing. But seeing that no one has asked for any of the pictures, any of the video footage since the fires happened of any of the incidences that we have expressed to you guys in the past, we thought we'd do a little more of a show and tell that we're not lying, we're not blowing smoke, we're not exacerbating anything. This is a daily occurrence of one kind or another. And we feel that you guys, a lot of you, have turned your back on us, and your friendship, your partnership, whatever, with Carus is more important. Whether or not that's actually the case is yet to be seen. But we are genuinely begging you guys to do something. We have people going into the hospital with health issues that they've never had before, or not to the extent they've had. We have animals.
3 weeks.
We have animals that the vets don't know what to look for. So we thought maybe if pictures would be a little more helpful that that's what we would do.
We also drove up there, me and her, and we took a video, and we also know that the city street sweeper was up there, and they helped take this mess up. When we were plumed by the fire, and our roads were black, we asked you in here to clean our streets, and nobody came. Why is it convenient for Carus to use city equipment to clean their road and their toxic stuff? That stuff's in your guys' equipment. Okay, so
It has to be disposed somewhere. Even cleanup material is contaminated.
Right, well, we were told that this was going on. I reached out to both EPAs, both federal and state. I reached out to both county and state health departments to report to them.
Did you report it or did Carus report it? Because this is the problem, sir.
I reported it.
Thank you.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's the answer right there. Carus is supposed to report a spill. If they have a spill
No,
inside,
sorry, I reported to them.
but
Carus
if
called
Carus
us.
if Carus has a spill inside their plant, how do they take care of it? Do they spray this special concoction on it? And by the way, I went up there and it smelled horrible. Whatever they did or whatever they put on it, it smelled horrible. It was strong and very pungent.
So this is our response today was like unbelievable. Because you should have so many safeguards in there as you're cleaning the store, doing the right thing to make sure it's right. And it just doesn't make sense. You should have so many ways because it's such a high profile thing. And when Brent reached out to me and called me that she was up there, both chiefs up there.
And this wasn't the first time. I mean, I have it coming out of the plant, the semis dragging it out into the
We
street.
called the Bureau of Land, and they said we could go up. They said, I wish we actually saw. We're trying to get the video of the actual squirting. The hose basically,
Yeah, that's what I heard.
hose, and the pressure kind of goes crazy. Sounds like what we heard. That's what that looked like. It was just a brief moment, but there was maybe 20 gallons, whatever it was that was out there. We were told that we could go ahead with the cleaner and get it off city right.
Yeah, we did reach out.
I didn't need to clean up our street though after we got hit with the stuff. Why didn't our street get cleaned up when I asked after we got hit with the potassium granulars and I said my road was flat? That's just a question. I'll move on.
Still all
My other issue is I happened to read the Carus Chemical newspaper article before I came in here. They think they're slick, but their dates are I got proof of their dates and everything of what they're saying in the papers, but that's not your guys' problem. My problem is what they said in there, specifically about how they got they put cameras up now to make it safe, which they should have had before. I was told it's under investigation, which I don't believe that, because there's been 3 stories. The fire alarm went off more than one night, and there's more than me in here that can express to that. And it went to Carus control panel. It did not go to my fire chief station. A tier 2 chemical storage facility alarm went to Carus control panel. I have FOIAs. They went to the Carus control panel. You and you both got the email. This is concerning to me. We don't want this building here. And the way I'm reading it, they're pretty much saying that we're up to code, and we're not up to code. We're going to go by the tier 2 inventory report, and we're still going to use the warehouse for them 8 chemicals. That's what they're saying. They know how to word things, and that's just it. You got to watch the wording on these people.
So, Jamie,
Nope, you're fine.
Okay. Can the city take some sort of a motion to, I don't know, if it was the church to sanctify it? I don't know whether.
I don't know how it got there.
I don't know, well, it doesn't matter how it got there. It's there now, everybody knows it's a use.
But we were still under the understanding they were going to empty that out.
But even if
That's what they're saying,
even
but
if they empty it out now.
can I ask on record, can we please have my fire chief, who has every right, go in there
right now
with video camera, because we can't buy into bullshit that's being fed to it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bust that one out. But we've been I would prefer Jordan, and I would prefer a camera video of it, because I don't buy anything Carus is telling us, and you shouldn't buy it.
Our officers do not have body cams.
And Jamie, that's not
They
the
don't.
point.
Everybody's supposed to have them by January 1st.
The point is,
And you don't have cam video on your cars.
So if
Okay, so when I was acting a nut out in front of my house, and I got no police report on it.
Release the body cam footage and make lobbies go away. We don't have like.
Well, you got the word of the man. Let him get in here. Where's Ebron at? Where's Ebron at? So he can look me in the eye and tell me what's that? Plastic stuff hidden under. It's mysterious. Everything's mysterious about it. The wrong person investigated it. I just tell me that you're going to do whatever you can to make sure that place is never up and running and I never see a semi again up there. Tell me that this man is going to go in there and do his damn job finally, because you knew about this, sir, on the 25th of January. On the 25th, I have an email that you sent to Brent Bader. You knew it was the Apollo before I did. How convenient is that? You know, I asked for a resignation from you, sir. I am sorry, but you don't belong here. Well, he needs to go. You hired him, you fire him. Well, I got so many lies here. He knew all about the Tier 2. You knew about it. He knew about it. You want me to dig more into this paper I got?
Ottawa had a situation that was different. It wasn't zoned commercial. That place was zoned.
That place was an old boxing building, box building. So they just abused the law, and you guys allowed them to do it. And you put the signs up. It's all in my emails. From 2017 on, you ignored every damn email I sent you. Yeah. And what did you do with it? What'd you do about it? What'd you do? Oh, you did? That's why I still got continuous month after month, year after year sending you pictures. I got the proof. And you're already been lied to.
Let's let him move forward. Yep. Let's let him move forward.
Let's let me move forward. Just give me 1 second, because I need to get out what I need to get out.
What about your daughter's test results?
You know, it's ridiculous how we get treated in here. I told you I treat you with respect. For your information, if Brian Brown hasn't shared any test results with you from my daughter's yard, I will go ahead and share one section of land with you. And this is this part that she has her garden and her dog runs in. She has a fire pit, and I am just shocked at what I'm going to read to you. Her lead counts went from the EPA 2020 report from 270 to 2,000. The cadmium went up from 32 to 50. The zinc was 3.9, went up to 5.17. Magnesium, 720 to 1640. Potassium, they're not comparing it because they didn't test it, the EPA didn't test it, but it's at 3120. This is coming from someone. And this whole time, everybody's been trying to cover up what it is. The EPA guy that came to my house.
The key is that we have your results now, and you go to EPA, and EPA is in that.
That's fine. But why are we here March 6th, still taking soil samples, still trying to figure out what's going on in people's houses? You don't see an issue with that here. I know you probably didn't listen to me in the beginning.
Results, and it took the time to get the second results to have a comparison before the fire and now. And that's what we're doing.
Brownfield didn't take the right samples in the first place. That's my point. Carus is twisting the media. They did hire a PR. There's people talking. There's more and more people talking every day. Little birdies, I call them, and they're all coming out. And somebody's going to get caught, the little birdie trap, because they're talking. And I don't even know what to do with half the information I have right now. So I'll leave it at that. This just proves, with the filter tests, with the soil sample tests so far, that either they've been dumping stuff on us this whole time, and we don't know it, or this all came from the fire.
Whereas
either one.
Said that they're allowed a certain degree.
They are allowed a certain amount. Well, then why do we clean our yards up with cadmium?
I thought it washes away with water, though.
And all that stuff. Why did we do a super fun cleanup just to cover up a Band-Aid? That makes no sense. Maybe they should have bought all our houses and put it in with the part they're not going to clean up, like behind that building where the chemicals are stored. I want to talk to you about zoning and how that place got zoned and how we can work on getting it reasonable. I want to know when the police and the fire department with Jordan Crane videotaping it goes through that whole damn warehouse. Because you cannot tell me it is empty. They're probably unloading it now because they know I'm up here, but I got them on camera, so whatever. I'm going to let somebody else talk because I know Marty's got a lot to talk about. We need to move forward. I'm really upset that you knew about this Apollo building. I'm very upset that you knew about it before I did. Your words are in here, son.
I told you it was the Apollo building, Jamie.
It's in the email. You sent me a link. You sent me a link to find it myself. No.
That's how I found out about it.
You sent me a link. He sent you the actual words, what it was called, what it is, and what it was. And then we've been in here attacking him, asking him what's in there, and he claims he don't know. Now, all of a sudden, 6 weeks later, he's got a paperwork in his hand that he got from Fred Moore that he should have had to begin with. Maybe if you would have read the Tier 2 report when you gave him the information, you could have saved yourself a lot of embarrassment. That's all I got to say.
Real quick, Mike or Jim, if we were to go in there, can we legally camera, or do we have to have a search warrant for that?
Get the warrant.
We'll have to look into it, see. The last time they were asked to go in, they voluntarily allowed the county to go in.
The county was the wrong guy. He even says he wasn't the right guy to go in there, that my fire chief had more law than he had. You guys have that message. You gave it to me the first meeting when you drugged me in the office.
We got it, and
That covers everything
the
up.
Illinois Chemical Safety Act pretty much empowers, for the most part, Denise, well, she's not here anymore, and perhaps Mila will know too, but it appears that the main enforcement mechanisms there are through the EPA and through the IEMA. As far as what the city's resources will be,
Inspections.
We're investigating that.
Inspections. You're in charge of inspections. I got it in writing from the LaSalle County EMA. You're in charge of inspections. You're in charge of, when they put the fire alarm system in, Mr. Mayor, when I messaged you and asked you what work they were doing, if they were permitted. That's when they put the fire alarm and the smoke detection in.
May I ask a question? So the city has done an incredible job of getting rid of dilapidated buildings across the city. And this building that's housing these horrific chemicals that the semis actively almost tip over on a weekly basis that all of us have been going through. I am horrified that this stuff could have tipped over on top of Bob's Rocks and that they've taken out half the fence and that we've complained about this. And by the way, Mike Spinitsky, let's use some of that drug money to buy some body cams.
Yeah, thank you.
But let me just say this. I get that the city is overwhelmed at this point by all of the information that's happened over the last several weeks. But one, if that building is falling down, why can't the city go in and say, hey, we want to inspect this building as part of like structural engineering or any other resources that you have available to us?
The fire chief, how many times does he go into a business to check alarms?
Thank you. Because here's the thing is, these trucks have almost tipped over multiple times. Like,
Well, that's not do with the trucks.
I know, but the thing is someone should have said something long before now.
It's got to do with the area.
They could have killed my kids. This is where I'm at.
That's where I was at.
Yep, so the, comprehensive plan, LaSalle's comprehensive plan for 2014. I took a quick look at it today. And we have some places that are highlighted in yellow, meaning I'm thinking that those are things that we want to work on. One of the things it talks about with industrial is industrial sites that are here and industrial sites that are located in residential areas. And it sounded like my quick reading of it is that you have ordinances that
That's what I was told too.
that control industrial sites that are near residential areas, which if everyone was aware that that warehouse was being used as an industrial site to store chemicals, should have fallen under the ordinances that
What ordinances are you saying?
I just, like I said,
We can review those and see if there's something in there.
We'll certainly take a look at it, check anything out, any input that anyone has.
Yeah,
And we are already investigating certain aspects as well on our own. And if you find anything in particular ordinance that you think would not consider strictly legislative?
I've gave specific laws on that they've been breaking, and I've given them Brent Bader, and I've given the EPA. Go on my Facebook, there's an email that I sent to this man, every EPA person that was involved in it, and I told them how I felt about how things went down. And it explains a whole lot. Because I'm telling you what, this is just all wrong. All of it. The lies, the helping them cover it up. Now they're trying to bail the mayor out. They can't find the paperwork. It's so obvious. And Carus is just making a bigger fool of themselves, they're slapping us in the face when they write this stuff in the paper.
Same question, obviously things are getting.
No, I won't be back, so you don't have to worry about me. I'll trash you online.
But a guy who's putting his heart and soul, not mention he has other job to do besides this issue, and then to hopefully say he's not doing his job or he's trying to hold things.
It's in the paperwork. It's in the paperwork. It's in the city meetings. It's in the city meeting.
You're not going to rip other people who are.
It's in the city meetings.
Everybody here.
It's in the city meetings. You are not professional, sir, and you need to step down.
Hey!
I hate to say that.
This isn't getting us anywhere.
We're not going to do that anymore.
No, we're not. I won't be back. Don't worry.
We're not going to probably take care of any kind of answers
No,
anymore.
you're not. You don't want to.
It's not helping you.
It's not helping you because you've been stonewalling us.
You guys need to do whatever you guys need to do. Talk to EPA.
I'll get a lawyer. We'll be suing your ass too. You're just worried about your precious career.
Your votes.
Your votes.
Everybody's comments can be voided by any kind of litigation or against. So make sure you know what you're talking about. More information than you think I got.
Alright, I'll try to make this quick. I'm Marty Schneider. I have a problem with last week when Jordan stood up and asked for more testing. We wanted at least 12 tests in the home and of the soil. Mayor, I want to ask you why you championed reducing the number of tests. And I also want to know what aldermans were for it and against it, and why it got reduced to, 2 in home filter tests and 6 soil tests. I mean, why are other people being denied when their tests, when their soil and filters come out?
I was actually in for no testing because I wanted to see what Brianna's results came back first. And now that we know there's obviously a change from a yard that was prior to the explosion to the now, maybe that's the situation we look at doing more. But again, what's going to happen now is the key that I had one president reach out to me who said, hey, I know Jamie doesn't want to share the filter results, but here you go, Mayor. I'm going to send it to you. I pass it along to Brent, and pass it along to everybody we need to pass it on to. It's up to you guys to do the results, but as soon as you get them to like you get not, we didn't know that he sends you on, which is great. And they're doing, guess what? This is the state of Illinois. Guess who directs the Illinois EPA? I should not. So there's a person who does have accountability through resident. They can have the authority to say, hey, this group, we need you to do this. And guess what? They're doing it.
But is it true? Is Carus paying for the test that the city do?
You know, we're trying to do the best we can do.
Are they paying for
They're
the
not
test?
paying for the ones we're paying. We're probably asking for it. But even if they don't, this group here wants to do it.
Well, why aren't you then?
We are.
You're going to do a few. And then we're going to wait 3 or 4 weeks to find out what those results are.
We want to
And
wait
then
to
you'll
see
decide
what
if you're going to do more.
Not fine if the council wants to say, let's test unlimited, we can. I didn't think it made sense to we do what we get from Brianna's yard. And over the last 2 years, or 2 weeks, we found out, right, that there was an issue.
Alright, I'll move on from that.
This is the first true facts we're getting scientifically that there's a different issue than the original investigation plus. Everything else has been hearsay.
But they didn't
test
test
the science.
for it.
Now we have the science. We have the air filters. And guess what? It got brought to Lance Jednock, and he's the director. And we're going to make sure we follow up on that. We did this morning for tonight's meeting so we can speak to it. But nobody can just gonna say, hey, I feel this today, or I have people, you know, when people start standing up, hey, I'm Jeff Bro, I work for Carus, and this is what I see, that's what we need to hear. I don't need to see people say, well, I hear Bernie's telling me. That doesn't do anything for anybody. We need somebody to step forward and say, you know what, I'm Marty Schneider. I work here, boom, boom, boom. I have not seen that yet, have you?
That's because
Okay, you might have, but they're not coming forward.
They're not going to come forward.
Well, then I'm just saying there's nothing that until we know things to look at. Now we have random results, which is because of this group here, so let's do further testing. You agree?
Correct.
That's how we're doing it. And now we're going to continue on.
So at the last meeting too, I questioned why the vacant warehouse was able to be used as a storage facility for their product, and we're allowed to cheat the city out of who knows how many thousands of dollars of taxes. The building has never been taxed as a storage facility. Mayor, you asked me then why I believe the building should pay a separate tax. My answer was because it has a different address and it's 3 blocks away from their Carus plant. You kind of looked confused, and you said you would look into it. So did you look into it?
I did look into the fact that, I was told wrong at the meeting here, we went to the assessor's office and they said it doesn't matter what's in or not, it goes by the secure for another building.
So it doesn't have another address?
I don't know about the address. Because I'm just saying as far as the taxability, whether the use is for, it's the same amount of taxes either way. But I can find out.
If they're storing accounts in there, it's
that's
not.
what you're told from the assessor's office. I know Patty has something different. When I asked the assessor's office, they said they don't know what's in everybody's building. They go by for another building.
Exactly what she told me was the same way that we would do it. That a vacant building is something like that has boarded up windows. It probably is unfinished on the inside.
I'm just
in the footprint of the
ways
building,
to
if it's a
interpret
doctor's
results.
office, it has more, if it's a medical facility, it has more equipment. So a tier 2 chemical facility would have extra electricity, it would have camera systems, it would have a fire system, and all those things go into the assessment of the building. It's not just.
I think it comes down to, I know myself personally, and I feel the trust of these men here. I don't think really we knew what that building was. And then later look back at some of the zoning for it. Once you get back to 1952 or something, before anything was even discussed really about the zoning of the building.
Well, I mean, even if it's just storage parts like they planned in the beginning, is it still okay for them to have it boarded up and have holes in the roof and stuff? I mean,
oh yeah, because you would get a fine if that was your house,
absolutely.
right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
For grass on the road.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the only people who see that building are the ones that live on the same street.
Right.
My backyard.
Nobody really knows that that building's there unless it's right there in your backyard. That is very unfortunate.
We asked
looks
Brent.
vacant on purpose.
We asked Brent to check the zoning, and I think it was as early as the first zoning map that came in, it was zone manufacturing.
Right.
So when it got put in, or whether it was just that way forever, we don't know. But as far back as we can see, that building has always been zoned for some type of manufacturing. Is that correct, Brent?
As far back as I've gone thus far, I've found no other zoning for that property, and I think that's why Ottawa had to have any sort of discussion before approved, was because they had to have that property rezoned for those chemicals.
So their property had to get rezoned, and Mila's shaking her head. Yes, when you have to get rezoned or have to get a special use permit, then they have more hoops to hop through. If it's already zoned appropriately, then the community has much less options. And Mila's shaking her head. Yes, she agrees with me.
So Jim, that would have been grandfathered into the first zoning ordinance.
It would have not only been grandfathered because I'm guessing I wasn't way back then.
So can we?
But in regard to the zoning, certainly from the first zoning ordinance that the city enacted, best Brett could see, it was already zoned manufacturing. So that's a whole different ballgame to what Ottawa had, where they couldn't use it for any type of warehouse until they rezoned or got a special use permit. Because in part of our due diligence, I conferred also with the Ottawa City Attorney, and they have indicated they're willing to work with us, and I told her we would be willing to work with them in the best interest of the residents of both LaSalle and Ottawa. So we are trying to explore everything we can. We just don't have all the answers. And part of it is that if the zoning was done over 50 years ago, that's not anyone in this room's fault. That's just the way it's been for a long time. And so no one here passed anything under the table or did any of that. That didn't happen. At least not to the best of my knowledge.
If it needs empty yet, or when it gets empty here within the 2 weeks, which we committed to, right? We'll make sure, we'll do the best to make sure that the building.
When's that day over?
2 weeks is tomorrow.
That's correct.
Press release.
And let me also say that the mayor's indicated that we are going to investigate on the building aspect
People
of it.
we have buildings uptown, some people think it's okay.
But you find them until they
We've
do
done a
something
structural
about it.
engineer on it, it's something new tool we brought up. We were saying this.
Okay,
from my own knowledge, if it's manufacturing, does that mean they have to produce stuff there? They're not producing that product there.
Well, there's many uses that are allowable in a manufacturing setting, and manufacturing is one of them. Plus,
If you're manufacturing, you got to be able to have the raw materials.
you got to store them. I would expect a warehouse. I haven't checked it specifically, but I expect a warehouse would be probably an allowable use in a manufacturing.
But when you think their insurance and everything would be higher if
Their
they're storing it
insurance-
on their plant?
What their insurance is, sir, we don't have any way of knowing. We don't have
All right.
privy to.
I'll move
What
on,
we
'cause
do,
I'm
what we
starving.
can get
Sure,
privy
we'll-
to is to try. Your questions are reasonable.
Yeah.
And we're giving answers as best we
I know
can. And we're going to try and investigate, as the mayor said, in regard to the structure itself. Now that we're aware of it, as Jordan said, I don't think until this happened, as far as the condition of that building and things, I don't know that anyone here was aware of it.
I have a question though.
I don't know that they weren't, but I don't know that
One
they
more
were.
time. As many of us have complained about the truck traffic and the quality of the drivers and everything else like that, looking back now on it and knowing that they were carrying this very flammable material, is anyone really sorry that no one looked into it? And thought about us down there, where these trucks are getting into accidents and hitting curbs and making these terrible driving decisions, almost hitting children. Is anyone really sorry that they didn't look into it? I just
Mark
really
Schneider
wonder.
at least apologized on video, saying I should have looked into it more. I should have talked to my constituents. I should have listened a little bit more. I think that's one of the biggest things we are genuinely looking for is acknowledgement and some sort of genuine understanding that this isn't easy on us. We know this cannot possibly be easy on you guys. We are just asking to acknowledge that there is something. And because Carus sure the heck isn't doing it.
No, we want to be having these meetings. Again, when we go back to the communities nearby, they give a minute to speak. Okay, bye, thanks. And they don't respond. They don't even interact. We're not going to do that. That's not how we
But I mean, you were praising their efforts on how they responded and their answers.
I thought they did a good job, Marty. When you were talking 24 hours out, they
This
did a
was-
hotline and they finally realized, yeah, we had to send people out. So they had to take one part of this, one part of this, and they left clean up. That was unacceptable. When they came out and said, you know what? We're going to do better. Okay, we're going to go ahead and give you a hotline and we'll have people come out and clean it so that you don't have to. Because Marty Schneider did put stuff on the property. They did, right?
Yeah,
So they should have to clean up for it. So yeah, I thought Initiative did a good job. You heard my comments about 10 minutes ago. How do you not have 3,000 people watching that one hose?
Right.
So it doesn't go, even if it was for a second. It's just perception when people are there with cameras. It's just, I can't understand it. Eric deals with, that has been cleaned up all the time. That stuff, you just don't, you can't have any kind of chance. And you already know you're on the view of,
Right,
of the
which is
public.
why.
Why would you not make sure it's foolproof? And I told Brent and Chief, you can't make this up. What is going on there? So no, not everything's been perfect. I do agree that I think they've done the right thing. Now the insurance, I just don't know how they work with insurance in my own personal life. Sometimes things aren't going to happen overnight. It's been 7 weeks, right? So I don't know what the industry standard on that. Your brother was insurance, maybe he knows better than I do. I'm going to reach out to Bart Hawks. I'm going to reach out to people who do the big companies. I don't know how that works. Sounds like that Davis group's out there, and they're going to get everything together and file one big claim, I think. But again, we're not getting much information either from Carus. We're passing information much back and forth.
State Farm's in a tough situation because they want to make sure that they get paid back by Carus. If they don't do the right things and test the right way and stuff like that, they can get out.
They're doing their due diligence, right? So, but again, it's, again, I don't know. If there was no group out there, then I'd be saying, yeah, for sure there's a problem. But I'm hoping they're getting their information, their ducks in a row, go forward with it. But again, I'm not an expert on insurance. We'll definitely reach out to some of the schools that have that.
We'll check further on that, and I do think that I don't know how quick, but I will find out from an attorney from Rockton. Chemtron did have a cleanup company hired to start working on things, and I don't know how quick they did, but they did. And I haven't seen that here. From everything you're telling us, they're not doing that at Carus. And
I know there's board of directors the amount of people from LaSalle.
That's wrong.
But guess what? 90 people were there. Guess where those people are from? LaSalle Crew for the most part, right? And I would hope those folks aren't going to be working under a situation in a plant they feel is unsafe for neighborhoods and for those stuff. Now, if you want to call those people out, then that's fine. But I know people that work there, and they would not. I know their morals. They're not going to work with someplace where they think it's unsafe. OSHA regulations. Now, this is an incident.
Nobody's ever going to call out them for wanting to feed their families and keep their jobs, but it's also, you're not going to find many jobs around here that are paying $30 an hour. So you're not going to have people looking the other way, even though they don't really want to. I mean, at this point, then, I agree with you, but there's also, okay, I'll just move on, because we're all hungry. But Carus has bought up a lot of land, and a lot of it here. They bought up the wooded area that includes Vermilion River. It stretches almost the entire length of our town on the east side. Why did they buy up this wooded area and fence in the land? And why would they go to court to fight to have the land taken off the Superfund site? Why would they not want the EPA to clean the land they just bought, especially since they were the ones that polluted it? Do they not care about the wildlife they are putting in danger when they fought to get it off the Superfund site? Why was the city okay with privatizing this land? Doesn't the city realize that that after Carus is finally forced to move their plant outside of the city limits, LaSalle will be left with this fenced-in land that will never be habitable? This will prevent LaSalle from ever expanding on the east side of town, and you would think that that would be a major concern of yours. I believe that there's two reasons that they bought up this land, fenced it in, and fought to get it off the Superfund site. One is the reason spoken earlier was that they can dump their waste on it like they're doing in their land in Ottawa. And number two is because if they didn't, they wouldn't be able to hide the fact that they plume chemicals and metals out of their stack at night into our yards and into that land. It blankets the land and our neighborhood with these dangerous chemicals and metals, so they will always be polluted with their dangerous chemicals and metals. The EPA allows these chemical companies to expel a small amount of what they refer to as emissions, but EPA records also show that they have been in violation of this regulation multiple times. This is a major concern because the dates of their violations are around the same time that Jamie and I noticed the brownish or beige powder in our yards and in the park next to the plant. Since the city council meeting, I've been trying to find out, since the last one, I've been trying to find out what was in that powder form that was in our yards and in the waste, now that we know that it would come from the plant. Is it waste, raw material? So I asked you, Mayor, to find out for me.
Well, I asked, I reached out to our people, and they don't know the picture.
I got the picture of a website that
we physically had material that they could check it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I sent
I don't
the
think everybody
picture
wants
that
to go record we saw tonight. Nobody wants to go record with stuff. They just actually, until they actually know 100%.
Who are our people? You said you reached out to our people.
Right around, he talked to our internal engineer, and then they thought it was the same like you thought. The people that one time something might have been at one product might have been.
Yeah, okay, so that's the thing. So when I was messaging you, I gave you two pictures. I was doing research on the picture that was sent to me of the spill outside of Carus. Because I wanted to make sure, because it wasn't me that took the picture, that I was putting it on Facebook, and it was a fact that I wasn't spreading lies. So I sent you both pictures and told you what was going on. I asked you about the beige powder, because that was a major concern, but then I also told you about the spill. When I found out that it could be antifreeze, there's a chance it was antifreeze, I did the right thing and I took it immediately off Facebook and told people why I took it off, because I thought that was fair. So, but I told you that after the third or fourth email or message that we went back and forth, when every time that I would ask you something about the powder, you would go back and talk about the antifreeze or whatever it was. So,
going forward, if there's anything on that powder at that particular time, call us right away.
I didn't know what it was. I mean, this was 2 years ago, last year.
I understand, so there's no way that I can, there's no way we can know.
Yeah.
But you said you thought it was on the website?
No, it's not a Carus website, but it's on a manganese permanganate or whatever website that shows that it is that product. It doesn't talk about what form it's in or what kind it is, but it's definitely come from the stack. Anyways, so that's my thought on that. The last thing I want to talk about, is a topic that Jamie, Mark, and I have not talked about because this is kind of a bombshell that's been hidden from the public, and we fear for our safety if we talk too much about it. But it's important not to ignore it any longer. Carus has hired a PR firm to control what the media puts out, to hide what's really going on. The News Tribune reporting doesn't reflect how the meetings really go, and have only reported on things that put Carus and the city in a good light, not to mention one of the most important topics that were discussed. After the Trib was called out, News Tribune was called out for their coverage for the meetings. The next day they deceptively went back and changed the original article. So anybody that goes back to their website to read the article, they wouldn't see that the reporting didn't reflect what really happened at the meeting. So in case they find a way to spin what the Sierra Club has said today, I'm going to give them something that Carus's PR firm and the local media will not be able to spin in their favor. The DEA maintains a list of illicit drugs. It also maintains a list of the ingredients that are used to manufacture these drugs. Do any of you know that the magnesium permanganate is on that list of being a major contributor to manufacturing drugs? Street drugs.
What kind of drugs?
Controlled substances. I could not find out. I tried to do research on it. I could not find out what it's used for.
I guess there's things now that I never thought were used for drugs, and now you go to the drugstore and you gotta go, from to the court and actually get out behind that, some stuff that you never thought was used for. So that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, well, it surprises me, and I'm sure it should surprise a lot of people actually, because these guys are supposed to be such, community people and care about us and everything, and come to find out that, their product is being used to kill our youth.
It's also used nationwide, worldwide to help.
Absolutely. So we gotta find.
We gotta look at.
But we should also be able to discuss both of them. One of them shouldn't be hidden from us, and the other be praised all over the place.
One's being used for a purpose. And the
Right.
other one, I don't think Carus. Are you saying on record that Carus is selling it to drug dealers?
Did I say that? No.
Okay. Then
That's why we haven't touched it. We don't. It's something that's very serious to be thrown around. But the fact is, it's on that
I hope they wouldn't be.
Yeah, me too. I hope that that's not what that was being stored in that warehouse.
Well, and furthermore, Marty, you and Mark and Jamie, you guys don't have to keep this to yourself. You bring that to manufacturing, you bring it to Justice attention,
Pretty nerve-wracking, actually.
Yeah, well, in the future, you can bring it up right away. You don't have to hold it, man.
I think today, and that to me, this is the most, my own personal opinion, that you guys brought something forward that was actually backed up by proof and not hearsay, not why you so. And it was the fact that we had the results from Green Stop and showed two different measurements at two different times, so we know it's a big baseline and a baseline after the explosion. And I think the fact that that information as well as the air filters are with the hygienic and then directed to IEPA is a positive thing for everybody, us included. Again, if it's a situation where we're told, from the company, this is what we're testing for, that's what we're going to test for. Right. And I guess we should be able to have that honest and assume that we've told the truth. And so if I've learned anything from this, I guess I'll use that old verbiage, trust but verify. Yeah. You know what I mean? So,
all right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for being respectful when we talk. I'm not used to that. John? Actually, can I tell you this in your way unless you choose?
Oh, sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'll look forward.
I'm actually not one of your constituents. I'm Katie Tricole from Ottawa, Illinois.
Okay, hi Katie.
Hi everybody. I've been a real estate broker for 39 years. I've been involved in environmental activism since I was 22. When this fire happened at Carus, my alarm bells went off. I've had some personal dealings with Carus, not as Carus Chemical, but as Inga and Peter Limburger and Inga Carus. And those dealings haven't always been straightforward or what I would say on the up and up on their part. Okay? So when my radar went up it was for good cause. I'm going to read to you a message that I got from a gal that lives here in your community who adopted a cat from me, because I save feral kitties too. Katie, can you please send me that information that you posted earlier about Carus Chemical? Their explosion, damage assessments, chemical toxicity, poisoning to nearby community. My beautiful and beloved cat Tabitha Jane is dead. I let her out Friday the 20th, and she was dead by Saturday the 21st of toxic chemical poisoning. It's not right, and she didn't deserve this. Tabitha was only 6 years old. I rescued and adopted her 4.5 years ago, and she's like a baby to me and my best friend. Her loss is tearing my heart apart, and it was so hard and sad and painful and unnecessary. I did everything I could to save her. She died in my arms at Care Vet in LaSalle on Saturday at 4:45 p.m. I owe them $460, and I spent $125 on her cremation in Ottawa. I struggled through the whole painful experience alone and in shock and agony. I drove her to the vet in my nightgown and winter boots. She was having seizures, so I held her in one arm and drove with the other. I wrecked the front end of my car in the parking lot by hitting a pole. She is the first thing I think of when I wake up, and the last thing before I go to sleep. My grief is too much to bear.
Did she get an autopsy done?
No.
So how does she know it's...
Well, I'm sure that she got that information from Care.
Well,
I'm just...
I understand it. I'm just saying that...
Mayor Grove,
that's a
can I finish? Can I finish? Now, this isn't just about this pet or whether it actually died from what we're pretty sure know that it died from.
But again, how do you know that?
Well...
How do you not know that?
How do you not know that? Okay, now, just I'm gonna go one step further. Okay, the city of Ottawa changed the zoning from commercial to special use by calling it warehouse storage. Warehouse storage is not chemical storage. Okay, so they have been deceptive to those of us who are citizens of Ottawa.
What falls in the warehouse storage?
Well, trust me, we're going to find out, aren't we?
I would think warehouse storage would be all the above.
Well, to me, warehouse storage from a trucking company is product that's like tennis shoes and things that aren't toxic and hazardous. What they've done there is within 3 blocks of 3 grade schools. Central Grade School, Shepherd, Junior High, and McKinley. Just about 2 weeks to a month prior to that, they denied lowering zoning to the PADS shelter because that would be a residential use in the commercial zone, and that would be unacceptable. Our Plan Commission voted for it unanimously and kept it very, very quiet. And our whole city council voted for it unanimously and kept it very quiet. Now, I will be frank and forward and upfront with you. I'm a candidate for city council in Ottawa. My son is a candidate for mayor. I had problems with the current city council 3 years ago. And I'm telling you, the corruption is here, and I'm going to uncover it if it's the last thing I do. And thank you for the time. Boys and girls, we're all human beings, and we all need to be treated with respect and dignity. And whether this woman's, we can't do an autopsy, sir. She had it cremated as she was directed to by the vet. But I'm going to tell you what happened to that cat is that it died from toxic poisoning. In my mind, there's no question. Thank you for your time.
mine's more of a quick show and tell. So I know Carus likes to put fluff stuff in the newspaper saying that, you know, they're all about the community and cleaning up and being there for all of us and everything. Yet, I know that there was complaints, and I know, Mike, you had addressed it in a lot of the McDonald cups and things like that on Carus's property a while back. Again, I think,
Yeah.
they're filling back up. But I did want to point out a few things that have been, I have left them be until actually today. I wanted to see if they would get removed by Carus, but they didn't. So this has been one of the things that's been hanging on the fence on Sterling Street, just right down the road from Carus. I have seen Carus workers wearing these exact kind of hats. And yes, I do have it in a bag for obvious reasons. But there's actually 2 fire extinguishers, but one of them was hanging on the fence on the inside, and I didn't want to get in trouble if it's considered stealing from private property. But this one was laying in a puddle right next to the road, right in front of Carus. And I do have pictures of the locations of everything that I took. So if there is any questions on, I legally obtained them. But this has been sitting in a puddle next to the road since the fire. And fire chief. I don't know if this is your hose or somebody else's from one of the other fire departments. But this is sitting in front of 1251 Sterling Street since the day of the fire, right next to a fire hydrant. It has been sitting there that whole time.
They got new ones.
So there's not been a whole lot of cleanup like Carus claims that it has happened. So maybe we could put that in the paper and rebuttal some of the claims that Carus has made, stating that they're all about our community because their lack of help, communication to you guys, cleaning up their own crap.
We'll take responsibility for those.
Well, I would assume your firefighters wouldn't use small little tanks like that and then just throw them on the side of the road.
No, we need funding, but we have more than that.
And like I said, there's still another one hanging on the fence right in that same area, but it's on the other side. So
The hose was on the hydrant on 1200 block of Sterling. That was from when they were watering the lawns for the side.
Oh, okay.
That doesn't belong in the fire department.
That's confirmed, actually. I walked my dog there. That hole's been there for a year.
Oh, it's been there for a year, really?
No, they use it in the summer.
I never remember seeing that before.
But what she's saying is Carus doesn't even bother to clean up their own land. Why would they clean up ours?
I mean, if I lived at 1251 Sterling, I'd be kind of annoyed that it just kind of gets
I'm
dumped
kind of
there.
annoyed. They should keep that.
Yeah.
I think you're right on that.
So I don't know if it's possible if Sierra Club can either test these things since they've been hanging out for a while or point me in the right direction, but I'd be really interested to know the stuff that's just been ignored on or very, very close to Carus property for a year or less.
Or longer.
Yeah. So I just wanted to point out that Carus is lying to you guys, they're lying to us. They are not the friendly neighbor business that they keep trying to promote themselves as. And I'm just asking you guys to, and I'm sure tonight with Sierra Club and others, to maybe see them in a different light other than the one that they're trying to perceive for themselves.
We had to hire
That's all
people
I'm
to sell
asking.
it, to sell to us. All right, let's go eat, huh?
For Dawn.
You can do that here if you want. People have to haul it out.
Well, no, I'm going to have it tested. Thanks, though.
Okay, just have one more question. The land I asked that is supposed to be polluted or that they just didn't do the Superflush site, I know that they never paid the taxes on that and that a holding company bought that. Just throw that out there. So that land that's next to our property isn't really owned by Carus anymore. A holding company bought it because they didn't pay their taxes. So then we're going to have a whole other problem. Because they aren't even a holding company that's even around here.
That's the NH branch, it's not the Carus branch.
No, TLI, which is a whole other holding company out of Sterling.
No, I'm talking about that Carus group up behind your house, not the chemical company.
Yeah, they have lots of different needs. They have lots of different
Same problem.
Which is the company's not the one that's
Green one.
doing the cleanup, it is that company.
The one directly that you just got the green sign?
My understanding is those branches was told, they were told.
I creep behind your
around
phone.
that going in there.
was gonna say.
We don't,
Should I get my knife?
we don't know anymore what's actually true based on what they've been telling us. And I am still very sad, and I'm sorry, and I don't mean to harp on this, but had I known, and those trucks were placarded, that they were carrying that dangerous chemical and driving so irrationally down my road, and the whole time that we can play, not one person in the city told us that they were carrying hazardous materials. And I just find that so sad.
To be honest, I was worried that the concern was brought up about the truck traffic and the damage to the roads and your yards. That's what I heard.
Did you look into it?
I did not.
Did you look into it?
No, and I know you would never intentionally put it.
Because I'm going off of what, the rules brought up.
But I wish I would have complained more, because had I known that they were carrying a toxic chemical, it could have exploded in front of my house.
But we're very fortunate that nothing did happen, and now we're going to make sure it doesn't happen there anymore. That's a byproduct of this whole fire, and you guys bring things to our attention and us learning as we go too. We appreciate that.
I have a question. You provided pictures about them cleaning up and all that purple. Yep. Where did that go? Did that go into the sewers by chance?
I would assume so. All I could see, because I had one truck.
That's concerning. That's very concerning. Thank you. I wasn't sure about that.
I had one when I was walking up Todd Street to come around the corner to the south side of the plant. There was a pickup truck that went flying past me and took up way more street than it needed to. And I understood
today. Clean up today.
That was today.
I'm talking about the purple that she provided in pictures.
Yeah, that was today.
That was today?
Yeah, this morning.
And that went into the sewers?
Yeah.
That's
It's on the street.
That's so concerning.
Groundwater, which is an EPA automatic. We check to be sure.
I know, but still, I don't find that okay to go into a sewer.
Called them that at that point it would not be harmful.
Isn't there?
How would they know?
So that's what the EPA told us.
No, they didn't test anything.
How
How would you know?
Number that you called, and when there was
A spill?
I'd say a semi rolls over. Who do you call? You call Carus?
Well, I wouldn't call anyone in that case, but in
you
this
call-
case, knowing what's going on, I call the EPA. And I call the Department of Health, both local, state, and county. So, all four organizations know about what happened today.
I'm hoping that the stuff.
I'm just curious of why Carus didn't make a call, because they had a spill in town and they were trying to cover it up. And the only way it got exposed was because of some camera people.
My nosy self.
I misunderstood you earlier. They did report it to me, then claimed they reported it to the EPA as well. However, I took the next step of calling the EPA myself and the health departments.
Thank you.
I'll FOI that information.
But is there a plan, because, the LaSalle residents are getting this fluff piece in the news here to say, even after they had this horrible spill, now they had to notify the city again that they had another spill. Are we really trying as a community to stand together and say, we're really going to try to make this company accountable for the mistakes and the mishandling that they're doing? Because I think they have the message out there that a bunch of neighbors.
It was further, it was unacceptable, like I told you. That was not from the plant, that was as they're cleaning those ponds that are on your property that are full of bad stuff, and as they're trying to go through that water treatment to get it right.
What about the pictures I have coming out of the plant? And the pictures of where the two guys, when it's raining, they're spraying this product going down the sewer. You know what I'm talking about, Craig.
I know, you showed me the picture.
I'm not planting people out there.
That was mine. You're welcome. I'll take credit for it. In the beginning, I was very nervous. I didn't want to be the one to say that I'm the one who's doing some of these things. Sorry, Jamie, take the heat at first. But at some point, I just didn't care anymore because I wanted to make sure that you guys knew there was more than one source that's seeing these, that are recording these, that are, no offense, Jamie, are cussing out every other word. Mine's like every fifth.
I thought to myself it was a little early in the year to be spraying weeds.
Well, it was right by the sewer in the rain. Yeah.
Where does that sewer go? What is that going to do on the environment? Not just the people, but everything.
Wastewater treatment
Just needs water.
That's
good.
Add more water to clean it.
I'll live here.
Yeah. So I might be able to look at my office. Okay. In the morning.
Yes.
I want to say. Yeah.
I'm just curious how close it was because I haven't.
They had. I think they.
Did the city paying for police escorts?
Well, I mean, I was inside. They all saw me.
I even told myself up there. We need to go there. Check yourself.
Okay, just making sure. And you guys allowed them to haul that stuff out of there even after we expressed our concerns about what we thought was in them trucks.
So real quick, when is Brownstone supposed to come back for the testing? And who's going to get those tests? Actually, I don't even know if
Well,
I.
we talked to George. He set it up.
Right.
Well, the 6 houses.
We're in the process of setting that up right now. It's my understanding we've been working, reaching out to the Illinois Department of Public Health. They want to know when. So we're trying to get a schedule together. There's no work for everybody. Maybe Thursday. We want to make sure that we have everything in line. But we already have the number of home ready tests. We also we're going back to them. We want to make sure that we have whatever tests are done and everybody's comfortable.
I mean, I don't need somebody present, a city employee with these workers, because I was told they were taking 4 samples out of my yard, out of my daughter's yard. I walked them out with the man. He said, here, and here, just like the EPA report was done in 2020, and now all of a sudden there's no 4 samples.
We can arrange it through the city.
And I talked to Brian about it, and he said for some reason you only did 3, but it was said in here they're going to go according to the EPA tests in the way that they tested it, sectioned in 4 sections, and I only got 3.
So I don't know the whole history behind that, but we're going back and forth.
Yay!
All right. I do know that they took it because I was there and watched them.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what that conversation was, but I was told today that the 4th one's going to be done.
I'm starving. You gotta go eat.
Are you making dinner?
I'm gonna make everybody else hungry. I'm gonna keep talking about it till you get hungry.
Recommendations, are you having plans to test this in the water sediment?
So I think at this point I'll probably be working with my team to understand what our options are, because as I'm kind of reading about potassium permanganate in certain concentrations, it's used to clean water, which is so ironic, right? And so I do have concerns about the little vermilion, and understanding where it is this chemical is and in what form. So I have a lot of questions because, it's mobilized.
Beige powder.
Just so you know, they said they did this stuff prior to they actually have 2 holy ponds on site.
Yeah, and they sampled the ponds, right?
So that water stayed, it was getting close to the top, but did not overflow. I know they did test the movement as well. That's the whole thing we're talking about today. They're doing a cleanup by a subcontractor to basically take that water that's full of stuff in those holy ponds to treat that water. And so one question that was on your slide was like, where did that water go? So the majority of that water that you can tell went on that holy pond. They did not reach the
Yeah, so I guess for me it's like it come out and then people are rinsing it off, and so then it goes down into the aquifer.
The ones in the yards and stuff?
Yeah, so you have
what we were told is the concentration is so diluted at that time that's not going to be an issue.
Like Carus Chemical told you
By the
this,
EPA.
right? Oh God.
But now you know all that other stuff's in it.
That doesn't wash away.
Not to mention the landfill that they own west of Ottawa. Because they've been causing problems for the neighbors out there for years. The Burnabys have dealt with Carus 40 years at the landfill that they own. Bad news, they're bad news.
So I was brought in as the water person because of the storage containers and some questions about how that was being stored. Chemical waste storage does fall within a warehouse, but how chemicals are stored is very specific. And like hazardous waste storage is a very specific containment. So now I have concerns about how it is that, how this company is communicating what is actually in there, and how are they burying it? Because people are trying to figure out what are you doing with it, and what is the possibility or contamination to groundwater with poor storage practices. So that's how water that's why the water person is here. Yeah. We have more questions and answers at this time.
I'm concerned because they say it's not enough number, but if it's something to purify water, you have an exuberant amount of it, then it becomes a problem. That's not good for fish. It's not. It's listed.
Right,
as stuff
that's
for
what
fish.
these tests for the fish and stuff. testing.
I know, but that's over time too, it's not gonna be a.
You're right, but I know at this time they were looking, immediately, if there's a fish kill, they were checking the levels in the room per million. Could there be different effects down the road? I don't know, I'm not a.
But if it oxidizes too, it's not bad. They kept on saying, no, it's not a big deal. But if it goes into the oxidation process, that's no good for nobody.
Well, Sierra Club has somebody that's been on this from the beginning, this Sonia Lunder. And her initial suggestion, I don't know if she's quoted correctly, was that it should turn into an urban. I have the quote here, so I'm just paraphrasing. I was wondering if she was even quoted properly because it suggested that it shouldn't be an issue in a couple of days. And I think that may have given some people a false sense of security if that's not correct or if she was misquoted. You would have to check with her. I can show you the article, Mila, to see if she was quoted properly. Because I have it with me.
Still a couple days. That's 2 days of it being hazardous.
Well, it wasn't clear as to whether the exact wording that was in the article. It's not for me to interpret. Is that
I guess why?
Lunder says that the oxidant soon will be depleted, meaning it will naturally evolve into a non-harmful mineral form. Within the next few days, London said it will reach its mineral state and is no longer pose a hazardous threat. What it wasn't before that, I don't
over the manganese threshold.
Well, I'm just quoting what she said, and it'll be for her to. What I'm saying is, they've worked with the Sierra group. They have an excellent toxologist that's with them from what the credentials suggest, and I think that Mila would probably help you make contact with them, and if she has anything further to share with the city, certainly the same as we've been willing and look forward to listening to you. We're willing to listen to anything she has to say.
We were just told you don't want to hear no more by the mayor, by anybody. Isn't that what y'all heard? Isn't that what you guys heard? That's kind of what I've heard. You've been listening to it.
Well, I did share a document. So New Jersey, for example, has a specific hazardous containment for potassium permanganate, where it's a fact sheet about what your rights are and how it's stored. So just share that with that link with you. So I think it also might be useful to see how other cities and larger cities are dealing with this very specific product. And like I literally just found out, like they produce 80% of the potassium permanganate in the United States.
Yes, that's
correct.
Which
That's
is
just
insane.
that plant, the one across seas.
Yeah, like so they're a big player, in that game, and so drinking water, systems are now kind of like up in arms. Like, where are we going to get this, get this from? And like the supply chain is going to be impacted. So it also is an opportunity to look at what other ways can we clean water that don't result in a need for a hazardous waste containment facility, because that is a real conversation at this point. But everyone has my information. I'm more than happy to continue the conversation and organizing, understanding what the threats are. I'm water. We do have people that focus on air, but we kind of work together on that. I'm sorry.
Me too, man. I'm starving. I'm trying to get out of here. I don't want to disrupt them.
Right now.
New business.
What was that time?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Get out. Business. Yeah, I got